Welcome to another installment of I'm a Farmer, your number one platform for all things farming. You know, often we hear that education is key to success, and often we get told how important education really is. But then again, let's talk about education. What is it, number one? Number two, how do you know you're getting the right education? Number three, are there any opportunities out there that can actually assist you to achieve your goal? Now, in studio with me, I have Sandile Mahlangu from SACTA, and we're going to talk about the importance of education and also, well, opportunities within the sector. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you, Tavi. And thank you for having me in the studio. Looking forward to the engagements.
So, Sandile, you're more than welcome to shout here, my bro. You can shout. I hear you're a soft-spoken person. Shout if you want, my man. This is I'm a farmer. Yeah, there's no holding back. Don't worry.
No, I will do that. Probably unleash the politician in me.
That's what we want. Yeah. So let's start. Tell us about your journey into agriculture as Sandile.
No, thanks, Tavi. I think for me, getting into agriculture was mainly based on seeing that there was potential in the livestock in the area, but none of the families were actually interested in trading. And then I realized, obviously, there are cultural attachment into it, but there was a possibility of commercializing that. Also because most of those people who own those livestock at home were actually having farms somewhere else, but one you could not even know unless you realize that because they have those farms, they were able to trade in those farms, but not with the livestock that they keep at home.
So let's get into why we're here. We're going to talk about education and opportunities within the sector. What did you study, by the way?
I studied agricultural economics. I hold a master's degree in agricultural economics, but recently also graduated with my MBA, and it's all in trying to see how we can bring the business administration into the agricultural sector, especially in the development space.
So you're going to be, or are you already a Dr. Sandile Mahlangu?
Hopefully one day we will, and those who have been encouraging will probably be happy that I'm considering.
So let's talk about education within the agricultural sector. Young people want to get into it from where I'm getting. You understand? A lot of young people that interact with us are interested in the sector. But they say that, first of all, there's not enough knowledge on what to get educated on and where to get this education from. So what are some of the challenges that you've seen when you're dealing with young people regarding this?
What I've realized, and maybe also it's us in the industry, we're not publishing in right platforms of the bursaries opportunities that are there, but we're also a bit short in reaching rural or township schools just to advise on what necessarily is needed to be, and also kind of tell people more about careers in agriculture. And goes back to me, I knew I wanted to do something in agriculture, wanted to do something in development space, but I was not even sure or didn't know of anything in agricultural economics. And later when you get to university and you are told, and also you realize in high school I should have done accounting and I didn't do it, and it was your first time meeting it at university. You just had to navigate. But definitely young people want to get in the space. It's getting interesting, and there are more careers into it. One just hope, as the industry, government, and whoever stakeholder that is there, we can try and reach the right people and share the right information with them.
So let's talk about SACTA. So for the people who are going to be watching, they probably don't know what SACTA is. So tell me briefly, who are you guys and what exactly do you do?
SACTA, it's South African Cultivar and Technology Agency. We were an agency that collect levies on 5 crops: wheat, soya, barley, oats, and lupins. And how SACTA came about, it was a partnership or an understanding from government, industry, and farmers because of the issue that they were realizing in some crops. or open pollinated crops, the productivity or the yield was stagnant, some even to a point of decreasing. And that was caused because these are crops you can use the very same grain that you produce in order to produce next year. And seed companies were, in terms of their investment, they were not seeing return on investment, which then led them to not to invest much into it. As these partners met, realized if you were to collect the levy, of which will encourage seed companies to produce or also just develop new technologies. That's how SACTA came about. Then what SACTA does, we administer or we are collecting the levies on behalf of seed companies so we can redistribute these levies that we have collected based on their market share. But because by law, if it's a statutory levy, 20% of the money collected should go back into transformation or developing agriculture, of which that's where my responsibility mainly sits, on that 20%. And with that 20%, we are guided by National Agricultural Marketing Council, which guide us on how we should spend that money. And the guidelines in simple terms says at least 60% of the money of that 20% you collected should go into enterprise development, 18% into skill and training, 17% management controls, and at least 5% of it should go into socio-economic projects. Then as SACTA, what we have decided was, in this 60% we take for enterprise development, we will actually create a system or kind of a new system where we give farmers interest-free loans for 3 years, then a farmer can pay back. And what we do with that, we also say to a farmer, because we understand farming, you can't only farm a crop of which we collect levies on, that will create kind of a monoculture, deteriorating your soil. We allow crop rotation. But to come back maybe into education, then what we do with education, we provide postgraduate bursaries. We expect a student, when they do their research, to be in the crops that we collect levies on. And that it's fair, because then now you're saying to the industry, the money that we have contributed, here are the results, because those results can be shared with the industry. But we also do internships. And with internships, what we do, we're looking for best host that can host the students as they leave their undergraduate degrees. And we look into that, but we also try and focus that it should be previously disadvantaged students who are even, most of them are from previously disadvantaged universities, and you kind of take them to institutions that have better technologies so they get exposed. And the other part, what we have recently ventured into, is also to try and fund in-service training for agricultural college students, because these students struggle to get in-service training. And we understand that farmers are busy. Also, farmers don't have much money that they can probably give for students to host them there. Then we pay for the funds, and we pay for things like accommodation, catering, and other technology exposure. Now, with those programs that we run in education, for us, we believe that always to improve this, you always need to be in touch, either with those students, be in touch with universities so you know the needs, but also be in touch with the industry that gives you the needs in terms of those trainings, and you constantly develop your program and help these students so they could probably just focus on getting the education, getting the exposure. The other part that we try and encourage wherever is to, whether it's a postgraduate or it's in an internship, it's also for the host to try and expose the student. We have learned over the years, and we have seen that as much as you have your formal education, you need your non-formal education.
Absolutely.
You need networking, and you need exposure. I think that's in summary what SACTA does, and especially on the transformation part that we do. And we try by all means to constantly learn. whether from guys like you guys on what you do or other industry role players, what they are doing, and we partner with them where possible.
So now you're dealing, in your portfolio, you're dealing with young people getting educated in the sector.
Yes.
Now, I mean, this is a vague question, but I'm going to ask it. Do you think that without your SACTAs, are young people ready for the sector? Is the education department, or basic education for that matter, are they preparing people to be ready for the sector? In simple terms, are we being taught to follow, or are we being taught to lead?
Maybe it might be a bit controversial, but it's a conversation we need to have and be honest about it. We are taught to follow, and I'll justify why I'm saying that. One, the question is, are people who are doing, all of these people who are doing postgraduate degrees, people who want to be researchers, who necessarily want to be in the postgraduate space or not? And I will argue and say a significant number don't necessarily want to be doing their postgraduate, but because the employment market has shrinked over the years, they can't be employed. So instead of going back home and sit, they continue and study, of which it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And later, maybe someday we'll go back and say, are they really conducting research on right things that will improve? But that's a topic for another day. Then now you realize that there is a problem of us being taught to follow so we can be employees. And maybe we need to, it's also an industry question, that is the industry informing the education sector in order to prepare right people for them. And as the industry, we see at the rate things are moving, they are moving very fast. AI is becoming an integral part of our lives. Are we being taught in order to be able to coexist with AI? Because there's no other way. There's no argument that you will say it's either AI replacing us. No one is replacing the other, but we need to coexist and co-work in order for us to achieve the productivity that we want. And I think with that, one will say there is a need for us to sit down again and say, let's try and find each other in the education space with also the industry. But there are developments that are happening. Most universities have started having entrepreneur hubs where they are training the students. But also the question is it not late when you start it at the university level? Maybe we should start it at the primary level and go with it. And also maybe even us as the community and society, we need to also try and cultivate the entrepreneurial spirit in whatever we do, even our programs or our TV programs or whatever that we bring on, so that kids can be able to adopt that. And we can lead and be industry leaders instead of trying to lead in the later years. I think if you look into our liberation struggle heroes in Africa, all of them led when they were young. And Absolutely. The question is, why are we not doing it now? While we have people who can show us the way, those elders, and maybe a quote or a saying in isiNdebele, it says, indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili. And once those that are in front leave, who's going to show us the way?
Sandile, I can sit here, my man, and ask you all those nice questions. But then again, controversialness. We don't want to step on too many toes.
No, we don't.
So now here, I'm fascinated about you guys offer. You said you guys offer bursaries.
Yes, we do.
Now here's one thing that I've noticed: a lot of people who get aid in terms of bursaries or stipends or whatever, some later in life they always fall short. Do you understand? I'll make an example. There was somebody in my family who got a massive bursary. Okay, they paid for everything, even the teaspoon that she, stirred the tea with, brah. But then again, she's sitting in the hood now, doing nothing. So now I want to know something. Now, how do you guys as SACTA make sure that that doesn't happen to the people that you are aiding. You actually make sure that the people that you are aiding become productive.
We try. We're not perfect. But in our effort of trying, it's how we also evaluate the title that a student wants to work on. We always try and say it must be something relevant, something that the industry needs. Because then now you're almost making a student who will be in demand. The industry will want to work with that person because they've researched, they're an expert in that space. And that's how we try. But also, it goes back, I think, to your initial question, is the education structured in there? And I won't claim to be an expert in the education space, but I will say we definitely need a conversation that says, how do you make this person to be in demand? And that's when as SACTA, we're also trying and say, there's a need for soft skills. Yes, this person could be a good postgraduate student, but firstly, they might struggle on how to market themselves. They might struggle on how to communicate with others. And you find it's as simple as that this person could be able to secure employment. And those are soft skills that we need. We're not in the education space, we try and promote, but I think as we identify these challenges, we also are responsible as the sector to go back to the education sector and say, we have identified these challenges, please let's work together and try and solve those challenges.
And it also comes down to the actual person that you're helping.
Yes.
If you are not determined to make yourself, well, available and in demand, then no one's going to want you.
No, it's true. But also in the other part, it says everyone in life, they need the first kick. You always want someone to help you. And industry gurus or elders or experience need to avail themselves. We need to be pulled out. As young people, but also and maybe I'm not as young as, but in the streets they will say, youth and dala.
Yeah. I mean, I said, man,
youth and dala. We also as youth need to, raise our hand and say, we need to be helped. And elders need to say, we are available to help you. We'll definitely be able, if both of us, those who need to be helped and those who want to be helped, and we can be able to help each other. So we can be guided into what we must do, but also then definitely the pleas to the elders and say to the elders, please avail yourself. So you can pick these people up, and you're actually picking them up even because you see what the future will need, and we are able to help them to achieve that future.
So another thing, how can something like education, help close the gap between large commercial farmers to your small scale farmers? Yes. How can we close that gap? And also, how do we make sure that we are actually closing that gap, whereas we're just willy-nilly just doing things?
True. I think the gap, and one first need to say, what's the gap and what caused the gap? So you are able, then you're moving from a good point so you can draw your path going forward. But also, we need to kind of shy away from only looking at formal education as the only solution. We need to include your non-formal education, all structures of this education to be able to get the other guy on the other side. And definitely education is a must to close the gap, because to close the gap, you need efficiency, productivity. And you can only achieve that if you have a knowledge and you have a know-how of how to get there. The gap can be closed, but we need to be patient on closing the gap. We need to also be clear on how we want to close the gap. We need to also be clear on why the gap should be closed. We need to be clear who must close the gap. Because at times we expect certain group of farmers to close the gap while they are not willing to close the gap. I always believe one of the approaches we should adopt is farmer aspiration. If a farmer says, I want to get there, and all of us as stakeholders, we are getting a farmer there. Instead of us deciding on behalf of a farmer and say, this is where we want to get you, now you're almost neglecting him being an individual who wants to get somewhere. And it's a typical example of what you will see in townships with spaza shops and and taxi industry. Not everyone is willing to own 2 or 3 taxis. And that is based on people understanding their capacity and their capabilities. But what we do then when we develop all of this township economic development, what we try and do is to say you need 5 or 10 taxis. A person says, I want what I can handle and what I want. And once you understand that, the gap will be closed, because now you're saying to a farmer who says, yes, I want a 500 hectare for what? Because if a person says, I want 500 hectare for a social status, we'll never close the gap.
Precisely.
But if a person says, I want 500 hectare because I want to reach to this level, and yes, we can still even advise in that case and say, but this is how you should get there, or this is how we think you can get there. But it should never be a case of, Tabi, we want to take you here and put you there. The gap will never be closed. Instead, it will, we are always worried that after 30 years, we have not seen much change. Maybe it's us as well, those who have been developing interventions, to say interventions were developed in isolation and by us who were thinking too academically instead of involving the main stakeholder who must actually close this gap for us.
So the willingness for youth to join the agri sector, yes, do you think it's there? And also, if it is there, how can the private sector help that willingness to even grow?
Yes, yes. The willingness is there. And the willingness, you can even see it with how we have started dressing in short pants and brown and khakis, that we are there, we want to get there. And also young people have started forming, almost in each and every province, you find a group or an association like YAD. That shows that young people are gathered in the same room with the same mind. But and then it says to a private sector, if you want to help these people, is your intervention intentional about helping this kind and type of people? Because you can't have the same intervention you had for an older generation for the young generation in this era. Therefore, we kind of need to meet as government, as private sector, and say our intervention need to be able. Because we can't ignore the fact that this is a new generation who thinks differently, who wants things to be different, and that's how we must work. And even in the world that has changed so much. But you still, I think, also probably even the requirements sometimes we have are unfair on young people.
Yeah.
When you want to create an intervention, but at the same time you're somehow creating unreachable criteria for this young person, maybe we really need to reconsider. And I'm not saying others have not reconsidered. There are young people who are making great strides in agriculture and they've been helped by other industries. We appreciate that. But is there room for improvement? There's definitely room for improvement. And it is now that we must, because looking at the unemployment rate, it's quite scary. If we proceed at this rate with AMA 2000 as they are, things won't be nice when they want what they want, because they will definitely now be forcing us to create, but also we would have declined everything or decreased whatever that we have worked on before. We will be taking ourselves back. And we definitely need our intervention. Young people are interested in agriculture. I just recently saw a post in LinkedIn, I think by Agri, Culture, forgot the exact guys, but they're also doing great work in training agriculture, training young people who want to get into agriculture. They say if a relationship has failed you, you must start farming, because that will never fail you. Kuzolunga. And that definitely young people are seeing it. I think the perception is changing to see agriculture as a dirty business, but it's because now we have realized the money that it's there. We have realized the importance of being one with nature, and we have realized how much we can contribute to the economy in the country, how much we can contribute to health and environment just using that one sector. And I think young people are getting more interested into it.
And food security.
Definitely, of which it's something that I think we have lived to see what it means not to have food. And now we're really getting in the space, and because the health consciousness is also growing, and more people are realizing there's an importance of producing your own food. And COVID has taught that a lot, as much as it really...
I was thinking about that when I said food security.
Yes, COVID.
Because during COVID, the only sector that grew was this. And during COVID, you couldn't get out and go buy food quick. Then you realize how important the agricultural sector is. Because then you realize, hey, Banna, so these farmers, all these people, these guys who sell vegetables on the side of the road, now they're important. Because we are starving now. We can't get out and buy food.
It's important.
Yeah. And Sandile, lastly from my side, my man, so what is your dream for the agricultural sector of Mzansi?
Is to see everyone fully participating, and maybe it's because of my portfolio also at SACTA, is to see previously disadvantaged farmers participating on the mainstream economy, and fairly so, but also agriculture stakeholders to understand that these guys, as they are participating, we also need to be very patient with them, because it's a difficult sector to be in. We should not judge them based on the commercial standard. It's good. We want to reach the commercial levels, but let's try and be patient for them. We must measure progress, and I'm really a fan of measure progress. Yes, you will get to the end goal, but the steps that these people are making every day, it's really, and also maybe it's to try and see rural communities participating actively, and we're creating sustainable markets as well. And we need to work on our value chains. It's difficult for others to get certain inputs because our value chain are too long, and that somehow cripple on the profit margins of each farmers. And let's take agriculture. I think when going back to all those that own the land, if you are not using it, please share it with others who wants to use it, and let's keep the land productive.
Thank you so much for coming through, Sandile.
Thanks a lot, Tabi.
Thank you for the lesson.
Thank you, though, for having me, and for me to share my opinion as well on some of these subjects.
And thank you for coming through to Fama. You know, one thing I enjoy about my guests is that every single time I leave here, I'm educated, I'm inspired, I am happy. Hopefully you guys are too. Please like, share, subscribe, and go into all our socials and talk to us, guys. Thank you so much for coming through.